How many gluten-free cookies should I eat? Hey guys, Coach Matt here. We're going to talk about gluten and why gluten-free foods are marketed as healthy and whether or not they are. The short answer to how many gluten-free cookies you should eat is it's exactly the same amount of non-gluten-free cookies that you should eat, which we can get into. But of course, that varies from person to person. It's all about the dose, right? So, you know, generally speaking, and I've had many, many lessons and articles and newsletters about this, but the amount of cookies that the average person, should eat is moderate. Maybe 20% of your total calories can be indulgent foods that are for fun, with all other things being in order, right? And we could go long about that, but let's just stick with the gluten-free aspect of things. The real question that came in from one of our members is, hey, Matt, why are gluten-free foods marketed as healthy, and are they? And isn't gluten a protein, and aren't gluten-free foods higher in protein? And it's this is confusing, and it's amazing to me, frankly, that after 20 years of gluten-free foods being so popular, people are still confused about that, although I'm not surprised. Look, I've been gluten-free myself for almost 20, over 15 years. For the reason I made that decision was because I had found from an elimination diet that eliminating gluten and then trying to put it back in, it was very bad for my stomach. So I've got many other videos and articles about that, but let's just stick to the question here. Look, the bottom line is, just because it's gluten-free doesn't mean it's healthy, okay? Right? An apple is gluten-free, okay? And it's difficult to overeat apples, but if you only ate apples, that wouldn't be a very healthy diet either, right? Now, a cookie is still a cookie, okay? There are many different kinds of gluten-free cookies. Some are better or worse, right? More if you want to get into the details, but at the end of the day, it's still a cookie. So just because it says gluten-free, whether it's a chip, a cookie, or a loaf of bread or whatever, or a pizza, doesn't mean it's necessarily healthy. It's all about the dose. All about the dose, okay? So if you're someone who's concerned about gluten, or you have a possibly, maybe have a gluten intolerance, I'm happy to help with you explore that and how to actually go about figuring that out the right way. But at the end of the day, if you're in the supermarket and you're not sure about whether or not something that's gluten-free is healthy, try to think about it under the same container or framework as you would any other food. Is it a processed food? Is it a dessert? Is it something that I should just have a little bit of? Or is it a whole food that I should be, focusing to have 80% of my diet come from there, right? So if you're eating cooking fruits, if you're cooking lean proteins, eating fruits and vegetables, nuts, grains, and seeds, and all the other things that are basically almost all gluten-free, all those things I mentioned are, and that comprises 80% of your diet, then you can have a few cookies. And if you want them to be gluten-free for whatever reason, great. But don't treat them differently than other cookies, okay? So with that said, if you have any questions, comment below. I want to keep this video brief. But no, just because it's gluten-free does not mean that it's healthy by any means. Of course, healthy is another thing that we could discuss. But yeah, the answer to that is no. Just because it's gluten-free doesn't mean it's healthy. And yes, gluten is a protein that's found in wheat, barley, or rye, okay? But I don't think that's pertinent to this question necessarily of whether or not foods that contain or don't contain gluten are healthy. It's all about the dose and the person. Okay.